الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Let me firmly begin by a couple of thanks that are on my view. And I'll start with thanking first to all of you students who have joined us. You are actually the today's chief guests that are there, because all this session has been organized for you actually, because we think you are the future monetary economy specialists, central bankers, economists, replacing us rather making our job very difficult. We are having so many brilliant students coming into economics. A couple of days back, I was speaking at IBA, and really I had a very honest opinion that the thinking, the scope of analysis were much ahead of us when we were going to that we met the students. So please treat yourself as the chief guest of today's session. Thank you so much. I have a big thanks to Safia and management of the University of Karachi for providing us this opportunity. And we rather have had multiple opportunities. We keep approaching to Dr. Safia and the University Department of Economics. And they have been so generous, so kind, that they are always there to help us. And I understand the work that we have produced was never possible without the guidance and the support of Dr. Safia and his team, Dr. Moeen, and overall the University of Karachi Department. I have a big thanks to Dr. Safia. Bigger thanks to my colleagues from FPS. When we started this work on monetary policy and inequality of the social footprint of monetary policy, as you can see on the back screen, this was the first time in the world in Pakistan the social footprint of monetary policy. It wasn't heard of before that. And it was very risky to partner with a team, with a idea which nobody has talked about earlier, because the risk of failing the idea and not going up to the mark was much higher. But it was the support from FPS actually, which enabled us to take this to the depth that we wanted. Rather, even as today we are sitting with you, all this credit to FPS. We have Director Pakistan FPS, Dr. Niels with us. We have the team there, Abdullah Dayo, and Javed is missing. So these are the guys actually behind. But you will see the paper that we will be circulating you, the one name there, Sajid Amin. But that is actually just a show of face name. These are the people that Safia, FPS, Abdullah, Adnan, and many other colleagues who are behind that paper. Unfortunately, technically, we have a limited space. We were not able to write down those names on the paper. So whenever you find a paper, anything good, the credit goes to these people who have been supporting towards the paper. A big clap for these. So now let me join in thanking also the panelists that we have today. We have Chairperson Dr. Minhaj. She is the lady who does not really need any introduction in today's session. Thank you so much for joining us. We have also Dr. Niels with us from FPS Country Director. Dr. Niels, thank you so much for coming all the way from Islamabad to Karachi and joining us. And you can also say welcome to Pakistan. He has recently joined a couple of months back. So we all welcome him to the Pakistan and to the Karachi as well. Thank you, Dr. Niels. I'm also joined by the Dr. Vaqar, Ahmed online, our joint executive director, and he is the thinking mind behind all this idea and how we curate it. So Dr. Vaqar, if you are listening us, thank you so very much for joining us. And if you are late, please hurry up, join us. Thank you so much. A big clap for Dr. Vaqar as well. We believe that SDPI, which is Sustainable Development Policy Institute, the #1 think tank of Pakistan, We are in the top 12 categories in Asia, and we are in 13 categories in the top 100 across the world. That would have not been possible without Dr. Vaqar's contributions to Institute. Dr. Vaqar, thank you so much. Then I have with me myself, Dr. Sajid, trained microeconomist, but now more focused on the kind of social content in macro policies. I'm sure all of you have taken macroeconomics. Generally, what I heard when I was teaching macroeconomics at PI before joining SDPI, I felt that the BSD modeling very rational expectations, they sound very rational, but they go very irrational when it comes to the reality of the world. They were far from the reality. So I tried to bring in social content in macro policy. The central idea is that be it a tax policy, be it a monetary policy, it should be considerate of the social implications. I'll just give one example to make it clear and then move forward. And that is that when in Pakistan, the tax policy is all aiming at maximizing the revenue, no matter where it is coming from. Mostly 60–70% is coming from indirect taxation. That is actually on the burden of on the poor. Actually. So that was the idea that any economic policy should not only be focused on the residuals like the revenue targets. It should be designed in a way, it should be implemented in a way that it minimizes the burden on the poor actually and maximizes the gain for the poor. This is what we are calling the social content in macroeconomic policy. Today we will be speaking at length on monetary policy on this one. For the closing remarks, we have Dr. Mustafa Adris, Dean of Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, will be joining us in a short while. So let me now formally invite the chairperson, Dr. Javed, for her welcome remarks.
Assalamu alaikum and very good morning to you all. Distinguished speakers and worthy guests, Dr. Niels, Hegrwisch, Dr. Vaqar Ahmed, Joint Executive Director, Social Development Policy Institute, Dr. Sajid Amin Javed, Research Fellow and Head Policy Solutions Lab, SDPI, team of FES, specifically Puratunadi Sajid, and please, Mr. Abdullah Dayo, and the whole team. I exactly don't know the exact names of all, please. And the faculty members and the students of the Department of Economics and the participants of this seminar, I would like to welcome you all at the department on behalf of the Department of Economics, University of Karachi. Which is, I have already mentioned to Dr. Niel that University of Karachi has a very long and rich history in terms of its importance, and it is one of the largest university of Pakistan. Today, as we all know, and Mr. Javed Amin has already, shed some light on the topic, that today's deliberations will be on the social footprints of social monetary policy in Pakistan, as the title stress on the need of focusing on the implications of monetary policy on socioeconomic indicators like poverty, inequality, unemployment, and so on. I believe that today's deliberations will help the participants of this seminar to comprehend that the monetary policy must be aligned with the social development of the country in order to maximize the social welfare of the society. This seminar will bring new insights for the future researchers as well. In the end, again, I would like to wish you all to have a very fruitful session. And again, I would like to welcome to you all to this specific seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I introduce them? Yeah, please. Just before we proceed to today's seminar, I would like to introduce one of our mentor and one of our senior most teacher who had been associated with the Department of Economics since 1962, first as a student, and then later from 1966 as a faculty member at the Department of Economics. He has completed his honors and masters and MPhil from University of Karachi and MS from Vanderbilt University, USA. Since then, he had been teaching at the university, at various departments, like at the Department of Commerce, Department of Economics, Public Administration. And he has worked in various capacities, like he had been the chairman of the Economics Department, of the Department of Commerce, Admission Committee, consultant at the UNDP, and his founder registrar at the Federal Urdu University. And his last assignment was as a director, quality insurance cell. With this brief introduction, now may I introduce and request Professor Sajid to please shed some light on the importance of the Department of Economics.
Dr. Amin, panelists, Dr. Nouri, my students, and my colleagues. I have been associated with the department since 1962, as Nouri informed you, as an honors degree and then master's degree. And since then, I have been teaching at the Department of Economics, as you just pointed out. I'm really delighted to learn that a very important subject has been taken in this discussion and this seminar. The issue, the social issues related with the development were first identified by Professor Sayre when she said that if you want to understand what is development, then answer 3 questions. What is happening to poverty? What is happening to unemployment? And what is happening to income distribution? These are the areas which are the core point for any policy. As Dr. Amin has identified, that the social aspect has often been neglected. Although much of the literature has been associated with the social factors in economic development, many policies also require a social perspective of the economic development policies. So I'm really delighted to learn that a very important and very neglected topic has been taken up. And the panelists, I'm sure, will brief you on various aspects how monetary policy can be integrated for achieving high social rates or high performance in terms of not only increasing the per capita income, but also increasing the real standard of living of the people, also increasing the self-respect or self-esteem, which is very important in any policy. And that will be possible only when our monetary policies, fiscal policy are tailored in accordance with the needs of the economy, in accordance with social circumstances or social factors. I won't take much long time about that. Just thank you very much to all of you, and particularly to Dr. Nouri, Dr. Amin, and all the panelists for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a double player sitting with the professor actually. That we were born in 78 and he is teaching since 66. So, and secondly, my name is Sajid and he is Sajid. So you're having 3 Sajids sitting on the panel. Let me now invite Dr. Niels for his opening remarks. Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, and also good morning from my side. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm comparably new to Pakistan, as was pointed out. It's my first time to Karachi, and I like it very much from what I've seen so far. But I'm not new to this surrounding. Before I joined FES, I was working as a university teacher in Germany, not as an economist, but in the political science department. And so I'm always very happy to return to university to see so many students in this wonderful auditorium. And yeah, it's a good thing to be here. Let me briefly tell you why FES, as a German organization, is supporting a project like this in Pakistan. We are a political foundation in Germany. We are the oldest political foundation. And a political foundation means that every major political party, every major political ideology in Germany has its own foundation. We as FPS are part of the progressive political ideology, the progressive political family, meaning social democrats, center left, whatever you want to call it. Our party is the Social Democratic Party, currently in government in Germany, and we think that freedom, justice, solidarity as our core values are important not only in Germany but around the globe, and that's why we work in more than 100 countries to support freedom, justice, and solidarity, not only with regard to political decision making, but also in terms of economic theory. And that's why we are very happy to work here in Pakistan, to work with SDPI, and to support this project. As I said, I'm not an economist, but what I do know as a political scientist, that economic theory is very important when it comes to informing political decision making, and that once in a while, sometimes economists are very fond of their models and their theories, but sometimes the social impact of their policies and the broader context of the political decision making tends to be left out. And that's why those studies are very important, to see that monetary policy has social impacts and should take them into account when it's formulated and implemented. And that it's not, we should not think in silos, that economy is one thing, political decision making is another thing. The social aspects are one thing. So everything is integrated, everything is interdependent. And that's why we have to listen to each other, learn from each other, and take the effects of our theory, of our decision making into account. One example that it's not so much about the social impacts, but of the broader context of economic theory currently discussed in Germany. As you know, there's a Ukraine crisis going on in Europe, and Germany is thinking whether to stop gas imports from Russia. There's lots of pressure on our government to stop importing gas from Russia, not to fund the war in Ukraine. And economic theorists, they calculated, okay, so that much gas is produced in the world. Europe has this high consumption of gas. So it's a match. Europe should be able to get gas from other places. We can stop importing gas from Russia tomorrow. It's no problem. We have the numbers, they add up. But then politics comes into play, and politicians have to see, well, okay, there is enough gas around, but there's only this much capacity of importing gas. There's only this much capacity of storing gas, and everything is a little bit more complex than just calculating the gas reserves and gas consumptions and see that it adds up. So that's why decision-making has to take into account economic theories, but it's also more than economic theories. And that's why, as I said, we should listen to each other. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very much looking forward to the presentation of the paper and to your questions, to the discussion that follows. And thanks everybody for organizing this event. Thank you for writing the paper. Thanks for hosting us, for having us. And thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this morning.
Bringing a very clear message, summarizing all of the work that we have done. That monetary policy has a social impacts on inequality, poverty, joblessness. What I call is that when state bank is designing a policy to control inflation, it should be considered that what is happening to labor working in any in the remote areas in Akbari Mandi. I don't know the Mandi's name in Karachi, so I'm asking Dr. Mandi from the hall actually. So thank you so much, Dr. Niels, with a very clear message. Let me now invite for the agenda setting for today's session to our joint executive director, Dr. Vaqar Ahmed. Dr. Vaqar Ahmed, are you there? Dr. Vaqar, can you hear us, please? So this is technology, it is improving the lives, but it is improving the disruption and uncertainties as well. So let's wait a minute for Dr. Vaqar. In the meantime, I would like to request the students that I will be taking your status of chief guest back for a couple of minutes, because we will be now moving towards the technical presentation of the issue, and we would like you to think yourself as the future researchers, economists, and please do take it very carefully on this one, because we really want you to expand the word that we are trying to expand. The team of 3 persons cannot expand the voice, it cannot raise the voice as this for all can. And I think it will give a great play if any 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of you can take up your research on these issues. That would be very clear and technical presentation. We're just waiting for the total. Dr. Vaqar, can you hear us now?
Audio is not connected.
Audio is not connected. Yes, I think we can now.
Go ahead, connected. He's on the way.
Okay, let's see this. Let me ask you a big question. How many of you have read the monetary policy statement? When did you study last time? Any hand, please. Last time वाली monetary policy statement किसने पढ़ी थी statement? Not a single hand.
One hand, yeah.
One hand out of 400 people.
Yeah.
So this is the level of the disconnect between the public at large and the monetary policy that is happening. And it's from the both sides. तो हम भी कहते हैं यार statement हमारी बात नहीं कर रहा तो हमें क्या जरूरत है पढ़ने की? और State Bank is sort of communicating in a very technical manner that many people really don't understand. But the good part is that all that we are presenting to you today is, I mean, it has not been able way, not possible without a very direct support from State Bank of Pakistan. We have been very closely working with the highest level at State Bank of Pakistan, at governor level, at deputy governor level. So really thank you, State Bank of Pakistan, also to be on board on this expanding this vision and scope and the discussion on monetary policy. But you see, sir, एक बंदे ने monetary policy statement पढ़ी थी, इसलिए नहीं कोई क्वेश्चन मेरा यही क्वेश्चन था बस। अब नहीं ये पॉसिबल नहीं है कि सब दोस्तों ने पढ़ी हो, आज तक 2 से ज़्यादा हाथ खड़े नहीं हुए। चलो, that's great. This is good to know that I have classify that. This is good. Dr. Prasad, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, Dr. Sajid?
This is fantastic, very loud and clear. So over to you, please, for agenda setting.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, apologies for not being with you in person. I was supposed to be in Peshawar today due to an assignment which we are doing with the Chief Minister's Secretariat. But let me first of all start by thanking, of course, our hosts, the organizing team, FES Pakistan, and most importantly, I can see that colleagues from the Central Bank are joining as well. So I would like to thank them for their partnership as well. I would like to submit 3 very specific points. First is that with the help of course, partners such as FES who have brought in the international thought around this subject, as well as, of course, local partners, including the central bank, the academia, we have been at least we've been able to generate a very healthy debate around the social footprint of the monetary policy. However, monetary policy cannot be seen in isolation from the overall regulation of the financial space. And that would be my point number 1, that a reform of the regulatory space in the financial sector is a work in progress. It has to be an ongoing effort, something which should complement monetary policy's role when it comes to demand management. Second important point is that the policy itself may be very good, however, its delivery requires experience, it requires skill, and that is also something which, of course, institutions gain by experience. Now, we have seen some very good skill set, of course, being exercised in implementation of monetary policy of course, in calculations which guide the monetary policy and fiscal policy coordination boards, of course. But of course, there's room for further improvement. And we see this room, probably we see this gap much more once we are negotiating with the likes of the fund or even the multilaterals or even other partners who would like to help us, but would like us to come up with our own homegrown plans. And homegrown plans meticulously estimate our own potential of growth, our own potential, of course, of other macroeconomic indicators. The third point that I would like to make is that it is only very recent that SDPI and partners have tried to at least make some advocacy around the welfare implications of central bank actions, of course. And central bank themselves have been a partner in this thinking as well. However, this thinking of the welfare implications of regulatory space should not just be limited to the financial regulator. This is a much more bigger program which Pakistan should undertake, and the non-financial regulators should also become partners in this process. A lot of monetary policy actions have to be accommodated by regulators who directly or indirectly would be involved in actions which monetary policy is aiming to deliver or what monetary policy is aiming to accommodate. And this is where the role of non-financial regulators is also extremely important going forward. So with these points, I think my final submission would be for, of course, the federal government as well as the development partners. Most development partners have not ventured in the financial sector regulation space or monetary policy space as much as they should have supported in terms of building technical understanding and capacity building, of course. But it's heartening to see some development partners come forward. And I think given that acts as the Secretariat for National Network of Economic Think Tanks, we would like to bring other Pakistani think tanks on board as well in this effort. With these very brief inputs, it's back to you, Dr. Sajid.
Very brief, crispy, and very specific recommendations and thank you so much. We do understand your very busy schedule, and we don't want to punish you for joining us, sitting alone in the room for all the 1 hour. So I totally understand if you have any other schedule meetings, so you can please cite at your choice. So thank you so very much once again. Let me now invite myself for the technical presentation. Please join me in inviting myself. Thank you. And can you please put the PowerPoint here? This presentation was actually designed particularly for the students. We have been reaching to different stakeholders at policy levels and other stakeholders. So this has a very detailed presentation we have for you, because the purpose is to lay down how important monetary policy is, number one. To what extent it can go to how critical this is to improve the welfare of the public at large. The monetary policy has a very critical role, and this role is now multiplied actually now when the autonomous central bank is moving towards inflation targeting. Because I think one of the key contributions that any central bank can make is the low and stable inflation. Because if you keep the inflation low, it increases your purchasing power and other productivity and growth. So thank you so much. Let me know if you can see the title. The idea when we started, every idea starts with a discussion around it. Many people agree, many people don't agree.
This one is creating a
Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. So the idea is that whenever there is an idea, we call it thesis and antithesis in your language, if it is an academic language. Once there is a thesis, there is an idea, then there is an antithesis, the opposite idea, and then there is a synthesis. The good parts of both are taken, the weaker parts are improved, and then there is a new understanding, new knowledge that keeps creating. So the idea when we started a couple of months back, around 6 and 8 months back, the broader purpose that we started with was not to produce a very hardcore evidence that how monetary policy affects inequality or other. The first phase was to generate this debate that how important is monetary policy. So that is actually the purpose of this paper and today's presentation, to make you think that in addition to fiscal policy, there is another policy in the country that is equally important for the development agenda of the country, that is the monetary policy. So if you see the title, that is understanding social implications of central banking, but particularly focused on monetary policy. Next week. So the purpose, as I told you, is broadening and deepening the debate actually and research agenda of central banking and monetary policy in Pakistan, and highlighting how important the monetary policy is. We are using monetary policy not as an end in itself. When we are talking about improving monetary policy, we are actually aiming to improve the welfare of the public at large through using monetary policy in an effective and efficient way that minimizes the losses of the burden on the poor segments of the society that we will see. In this way, this work aims to support and strengthen policies for improving socio-economic welfare of the public at large. There were 3 motivations when we started this discussion, or we thought to start this discussion. The one is that now there is a global rethinking on the role of monetary policy. If you see the COVID-19, the first response to COVID-19 came from the central banks. It was the monetary policy, because fiscal policy has a lagged response. It came later, 1 month or later, but immediately the first response to monetary policy to ensure liquidity in the market was cut down the interest rates from the central banks across the world. By State Bank of Pakistan as well, it cut its interest rate from 13.25 to 7% to ensure that there is liquidity in the market. There are many financing schemes. You are still hearing about the top and other schemes of State Bank of Pakistan. So there was a thinking that a monetary policy has a very effective role in crisis or the challenges, immediate responses. And this is where the monetary policy went beyond its very traditional target of inflation and it went to the overall welfare, job restorations, avoiding the employment layoffs, creating a situation where SMEs sustain and survive so that people are not going jobless. So this was the one thinking that has been going on this one. And it started actually from global financial crisis of 2008-9, but it was at the peak in the COVID-19. The second motivation that is, the biggest way to bring new ideas, the best time is to when there is a transition happening, because then there is acceptability. In past stagnancy, in a very stagnant mode, this is very difficult to sort of chip in any ideas which are held over the 70 years of the century. But when there is a transition going on, you have a space that you can chip in. So this was space provided in Pakistan when State Bank of Pakistan was moving towards inflation targeting regime through its SDPI Amendment Act 2021. So we thought that this is the time, now when there is an autonomous State Bank of Pakistan focusing on inflation targeting, so let's bring in a picture those who are the actual beneficiaries or affectees, that is the public at large, the common man. So this was the second thought that motivated us to start discussion on the social footprint of monetary policy. Finally, and that is always, you write also in your thesis that this is the first ever that I am writing. This is the first ever proposal that I am writing on this one. In other words, it means that there is still a gap existing. So we thought then we realized that the literature on monetary policy and the discussion and debate on monetary policy was very much limited to macro indicators like exchange rate, growth, exports, current account deficits, trade deficits. It was much further away from the issues of the public policy of the Pakistan, that is poverty, inequality, how, for example, how inflation burdens the poor people, the bottom 20%, we don't have any estimate actually. So this is the kind of, and then you can see the figure on the slide. I'm sure my colleagues from State Bank are also there. When we searched on the Google page of the State Bank of Pakistan, over the last 20 years, the working papers that has been produced, hardly anyone has the word inequality or poverty in its title. They are very excellent papers, but this is exactly that the scope of research on monetary policy within State Bank and outside of the State Bank was very limited. So we thought to bring this new dimension in there one, that let's do it. The idea is monetary policy for all. IMF is recently working very good on this one, that how monetary policy affects inequality particularly, and they are titling it as a monetary policy for all. So that is exactly what we took it and started the debate on in Pakistan. Next week. So there can be three ways. I just quickly, given the time limitations, we will be giving you the paper as well. This paper is also available on the FDS website and on SDPI website. We will be sharing the link actually. You can share the link on the chat box for people who are online right now. There can be three channels minimum through which monetary policy have a differentiated impact. It affects people differently. So number one is the interest rate hikes. It affects the people differently. If you are working in a capital market, stock market, or you're working in labor market, your elementary applications, the impact is actually different. Similarly, it is different from savers and borrowers. Those who are the saver group, they can earn money from rate hikes. But those who are the borrowers, they have to pay the price actually significantly. Again, when there's a contraction in economy, for example, it affects different sectors differently. This is the channels how monetary policy has a differentiated impact on different segments of society. This is there. Again, money supply growth. We always read that money supply growth is basically cause of inflation. But again, it has again a different impact on different people. I'll just quickly give one example. I know very technical issues, but just to give you a flavor. Money growth affects different people differently, at least through one channel. There can be multiple, but this is one channel that is important. You know, the poor people's asset is mainly the cash. And of the rich, it is the bonds or something else. So whenever there is a money supply growth, the base money supply growth, generally it goes a bigger share to the poor people of the country because they have more transactions in cash. So what that the evidence that the literature suggests, that is why the food inflation is higher, because the poor people's more than 60% income goes to food basket. They have a low income, so a higher share goes to the food basket. So now if there's a money supply growth exponentially, it is the asset of poor, the cash is the asset of poor. They spend more on the food basket. So generally food inflation higher than the core inflation and the other inflation. So this is again where this is a differentiated impact. And finally, third impact, that what we are calling inflation inequality. This has been least used term in Pakistan. That market responds to inflation in a different way. The products, those who are consumed by the rich, markets spend more research and development spending there, so it has a more competitive market than the products which are consumed by the poor. So this is where it creates inflation equality, because when you go in a competitive market, the prices of products goes down. If you see the TV, mobile prices, while there is certain real range is separate, but generally you see the TV prices and other prices have become more competitive now. So people go every year for the new model of the mobile. So every company, Samsung, Apple, they are putting their research and development more into the mobiles, TVs, because every year they keep changing the models and the rich segment is keep buying. So less is focused on the products which are consumed by the poor people, so their cost remains uncompetitive. The prices remain uncompetitive and higher. So this is where the burden goes more on the poor people. So this is what we are calling inflation inequality. I totally understand very complex issue, but I'm trying to be as simple as possible. I hope I was able to clear. So these and many other channels make it sort of mandatory that there should be a research, at least research to start with, first the debate and then the research, that how policies to control inflation are affecting different people differently. There are two quick clarifications. The one question that I am generally asked, that when we are bringing inequality and poverty, this is not a mandate of State Bank of Pakistan or any central bank directly mandate. We have two submissions. We are not asking any central bank to focus on inequality. We are asking to remain focused on price stability and deliver a low and stable inflation in a way that it minimizes the burden on the poor people, number one. Number two, we totally understand, as Dr. Vaqar also said, that monetary policy cannot be studied, analyzed, implemented without studying and understanding the interactions with other policies. This is where we are proposing that when there are policy design, it must be clearly communicating that what can be the side effects of our policy that is necessary to take. And then those can be communicated to the government that these effects are beyond our control, but you set your policy, fiscal policy, in a way that it minimizes that side effects of the monetary policy decisions. So this is how we can sort of start discussion on kind of integrating monetary policy into the broader development agenda of the country. So this was a quick that how monetary policy has social implications. It creates inequality. It affects your job chances in the labor market differently for the different applications. This needs to be studied. Not necessarily that these are very strong in Pakistan. Let's be very careful. Not necessarily whatever we are saying is right. We are only asking that start exploring them, assess them at least, see what is happening, and then upgrade yourself as accordingly. Next, please. One other next, please. You can go on 2 slides more. The methodology slide. I'll just be quickly that how we did it. I'm just giving it that if you wanted to do this study or replicate this study in your area of research, we did it through the best reviews, the consultations. In the second stage, we are now moving towards the household data, that how inflation in Pakistan is affecting household inequality, consumption, and income. You can use many surveys are there. PSLM is there, household integrated economic survey is there, and many other surveys. And State Bank has a very rich data. Sitting in University of Karachi, you can reach to State Bank of Pakistan for data, and I'm sure we can help you. So I'll just lay down 5 key recommendations that we are proposing in this study. Next one, please. The number one is that central bank, the State Bank of Pakistan, must deliver on price stability to ensure progress on development agenda of the country and welfare of the public. Historically, and that is, I think, the State Bank was very right, that we need an SDPI amendment Act 2021. This was the very timely, rather late actually. We should have done it very early. We should have not left it on IMF actually. The government in Pakistan should have given State Bank autonomy and the autonomy to target inflation, because this is the prime responsibility of any central bank. And this is the biggest contribution. If any State Bank of Pakistan and Pakistan can provide you a low inflation, just assume that in this point of time, if inflation is 5%, let's assume that every else thing remains the same. But if the inflation is 5%, your real purchasing power will be higher, at least double, because we have now 10% something inflation. So this is how keeping the inflation low can produce your real wage income. Low and stable inflation affects the 3 minimum sort of stages are the rounds. The first, it immediately improves your real wage. Let's assume your nominal wage growth is 7% and wage is 10%. Inflation is 10%. So you are having a negative real wage growth. Your real income is actually declining, what we call purchasing power, that is declining. So now assume your wage growth remains 7%, but inflation is stable at 5%. You are constantly every year increasing your purchasing power by 2%, and your aggregate demand, economic activity promotes. And when there is increase in economic activity, your productivity growth happens. Second stage. And then third stage, that productivity growth provides a sustained foundations to economic growth of the country. So this is how a low and stable inflation can help revise not only the social implications, it not only provides social welfare, it can provide us with economic welfare as well, economic growth as well. Thank you. So we are providing in this suggestion based on the consultation which we had with the experts in the field. We have names there, ex-governors of State Bank of Pakistan, members of many committees, top economists. So we are providing that if State Bank of Pakistan has to really go to inflation targeting, the target of inflation should not be beyond 5%, because the real wage growth or the nominal wage growth of poor segments of population is low. So if you are setting any target of 7% or 9%, while you will be delivering on the target, but you will be actually eroding the purchasing power of the poor segments continuously. So this is well, we can have a debate on this, but how it can be defined. We have given it in the paper, but I just move forward this one. And this is very, clear to understand for you. Why is this SDPI Amendment Act 2021 very important? Because in absence of it, State Bank Pakistan does not have any fixed medium-term inflation target. Every year the targets were changing. So State Bank was sort of chasing a random moving inflation target, saying it was not delivering on the price stability by the definition of the system it had. Now this act provides State Bank that there will be a medium-term target set by the government of Pakistan in consultation with State Bank of Pakistan, that next 5 years the inflation should be 5%, not more than that on average. There can be some minor changes, there can be plus minus 1 range. And gradually it should move downwards towards 3% or 4% in next 5 to 7 years. So this is how it can improve the purchasing power of the people, economic power of the people. Next please. But for this to happen, and we were glad that once there was the SDPI Amendment Act, we gave a first response. SDPI was the only think tank who wrote immediate response that what needs to be further clarified. The one was that there should be a very clear definition of price stability. Initially, the Act says that domestic price stability. In the revised, it says low and stable inflation. And we totally understand that there will be a secondary legislation that what exactly that level is. It is the 5%, or 3%, or 4%, whatever it is. And it is for 5 years, 7 years, or 3 years. That should be very clearly defined, because this is only way where State Bank or central bank can deliver on, because if the target is not clear, you cannot deliver. And we are proposing that it should be in written in the secondary legislation by the parliament or whatever the forums are. So it will be there. Another excuse that I think need to go, that is that the supply side inflation is not under the control of State Bank of Pakistan. So if there is a supply shock, definitely State Bank cannot manage it. We are proposing that if you have to increase the accountability and have to deliver on the measure the performance on the target, you can pick up an indicator which is least volatile to supply side targets. It can be non-energy, non-food, core inflation. That can be the target. So we leave it on State Bank and the government, they can usually agree that what is the, but any target should be free of that volatility or seasonality, so that you can measure the performance and the progress. Next please. This is again what I have said, that they should be very quantifiable targets. So it should not be vague targets. For example, supporting economic policies of the government is a bit vague target. What will be the key indicator of supporting economic policies of the government? Many banks have it differently. For example, in New Zealand, the Central Bank of New Zealand has sustained growth of employment, job opportunity. So that can be one as well. So, but this is just to start a discussion. It can be any target that State Bank of Pakistan thinks more appropriate for Pakistan. But it should be quantifiable. Secondary and tertiary targets should be quantifiable as well, like the first one. The most important is that when you go towards inflation targeting regime, actually, you are moving from a reactionary monetary policy to a forward-looking monetary policy. Now your target is not that once inflation is high and you improve inflation, you control inflation by interest rate or the other ways. Now you have to manage the expectations of the people in a way that they are structured around a low and stable. All of you economic students know that economy is more about sentiments and perceptions. So inflation expectations are very central, and this is where communication becomes very central. And we think last week we had a discussion in the hall that the biggest task for central bank statement of Pakistan will be altering high and volatile inflation expectations towards the low and stable inflation, because historically Pakistan has had a high and volatile inflation, making people believe. This is people ask me that how do you think that SDPI Amendment Act 2021, what it has changed, that now State Bank will be able to deliver a low inflation compared to the historical evidences. What we are saying is that now State Bank has an anchor of inflation, it has a clear target, and it will be communicated around that target. So this is where State Bank needs to act, and this is the time to act now actually, because if you start now altering the expectations of people, it will take time. So they should be. And for this should be a very clear communication to the public at large, businesses and people. We have to go beyond a very technical monetary policy statement to the policy which touches upon the issues of the public policy at large. And initially we have proposed, and we're very thankful to the State Bank higher management that they agreed on this one, that at least in initial phases, there should be one non-technical summary para of the whole MPS monetary policy statement, which clearly states that what can be the effects, why this decision is taken, in a language which a common man understands. And in this way, State Bank itself will be expanding its approach and the coverage of monetary policy when it is reaching to the public at large. So we have some good proposals on communication strategies as well, but I'm just giving a summary on this one. So last 2 minutes, and then we will open the discussion with you. This is what we said, that research agenda both at universities and State Bank of Pakistan needs to be expanded. Monetary policy. We would love to have your pieces of papers coming on monetary policy and social good monetary policy and inequality. Feel free, if SDPI, myself, Dr. Safia, Dr. Amin, anybody can help you. So do let us know. We would be really grateful, and that is the purpose to come to you actually. You are the prime stakeholder, because if we have to sustain this debate on monetary policy and its social implications, results can be either way. We are not forcing that this is only true what we are saying. It can be either way. But let's at least have an assessment. And it will come from you. You have the resources, you have to do these, you have to write papers. So please do pick up on this one. We're also asking State Bank of Pakistan that it needs to expand the subject agenda, because monetary policy is a public policy. The ultimate purpose, controlling inflation, is a means, not the end purpose of monetary policy. It is a tool to promote welfare of the people of the Pakistan. So there should be a picture while State Bank is researching. And we understand that there can be many issues which are not under direct control of State Bank of Pakistan. But State Bank of Pakistan has one of the most brilliant minds sitting there in State Bank of Pakistan. They can think, they can produce a research in a way that we think tanks and academia may not produce in that technically correct and rigorous manner. So when it comes from them, that monetary policy actions have impact on inequality. So the federal and provincial governments should take these steps to minimize those inequality impacts. That has a larger weight than what we are speaking, what you will be speaking. So we are really sort of submitting to State Bank of Pakistan to expand research agenda. And really happy that there has been a very welcome opening. The State Bank was very open to hear us, to listen us, to share with us their thoughts. And that is, I think, where the discussion starts and debates. We really appreciate State Bank of Pakistan for opening its doors to us. We have been very closely engaging with State Bank of Pakistan. We hope to see the needs for that. And there we have multiple options. For example, there should be internships in students, monetary policy internships in academia, in civil society, in think tanks. And this is where the development partners like FPS, like many other development partners, can also come forward to sort of their Yeah. So I'll just close in next 2 minutes that State Bank of Pakistan is doing very excellent jobs. It has already set SDP chairs in universities. Many universities have State Bank of Pakistan chairs which are promoting a sort of debate on monetary policy through producing research, through producing papers. But one submission that we are, that most of that work is as technical as a State Bank's technical work. So there needs to be some arrangements which are translating those technical words into a simple language which policymakers can understand, which federal government can understand that how important this monetary policy is. I mean, you might have heard the opposition parties saying that we will reverse SDPI amendment when we are in the power. So one reason actually is that there is a lesser understanding how critical monetary policy is and how critical independence of the central bank is to deliver on a lower scale. That needs to come in a very non-technical, simple words that a policymaker can understand. So this is where we are requesting that there should be sort of initiatives with the civil society organization, think tanks, policy organizations to sort of take these technical messages and give it non-technical messages. I thank you and I really thank you for your attention. Please, So, Chair, with your permission, we would like to have we would like to take first question, that you comments first, and we can take questions. So we open the questions. दो जगहों पे क्वेश्चन नहीं होते या तो कुछ समझ नहीं आया होता या सब समझ आ गया होता. So let's see how things go on your side.
Here.
Dr. Sajid, this is Charity. Thank you very much for your information on monetary policy. And of course, it's a very, very important topic like that we should study and we should align monetary policy in such a way that like we could help both. But like we have got different models. Like either you have got consumption-led growth or you have got investment-led growth. Like in the beginning, what you require is investment-led growth. Like Pakistan actually, like the state Pakistan is in, is actually the mission stage of development. We don't need the consumption-led growth. We need investment-led growth. And for that, we need incentive for the investors to invest, and eventually the higher interest rates. And as what actually the SDPI basically has been doing over here, as price stability, of course, has got impact directly on the lives of the people. But like if you take the policy of, say, for example, low inflation, and if you say, for example, encourage consumption in the society, like that actually is not going to help us in the stage of the development. We need to think about it like we should investment and growth. We need to encourage more sales, less consumption, and that's what actually some of my concerns or questions. Thank you very much.
Can take 2 more questions and then I will respond. ये सवाल पूछने से मत घबराइए. I have got 10 years. सवाल पूछना सबसे मुश्किल काम है, अच्छा सवाल पूछना. तो हो सकता है आपको जो सवाल बहुत सादा लगता हो वो हमारे लिए बहुत अहम है. So please don't hesitate कि आपका सवाल थोड़ा सादा या खुश लगता है. Do ask please.
Hello, sir. My name is Mariam and this is my 3rd year honor topic. My question is, in the recent monetary policy statement, by State Bank has led to interest rate unchanged. I guess it's 9.25.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other question? I think it's there.
My name is Moderator and I'm a student of MA Economics and Finance program in the Panellists. And my question is that we took a seminar a few weeks ago, and in that seminar, we were introduced with the concept that the recent hike that we have been witnessing in the commodity prices, it was attributed to the commodity storage index, because a few countries in the wake of the pandemic, they took extraordinary measures and kept the commodities in quarantine for a longer period of time, and hence possibly storage prices to increase. which in turn caused the commodity prices to go up. But it is also forecasted that once it stabilizes, then the prices would be decreasing on their own. So my question is that if the price level is expected to decrease on its own or stabilize on its own, then what role can monetary policy can further play into it based on what the panel has discussed? Thank you.
Thank you, Ji. Let me just respond to these three, and we can have another round. We can identify some more hands. So let me first come the question from this side. This is exactly the point that we are trying to. You know what an investor wants? Absence of uncertainty, absence of volatility. We are not asking to sort of take away all the benefits of the profits that's happening. The biggest determinant for an investor is the avoiding the volatility and the uncertainty. And this is where State Bank of Pakistan's role or any central bank role becomes very critical. If an investor can think that inflation will remain stable for next 5 years or 3 years with minor changes, there is no volatility. One of the biggest, the evidence suggests that it is the inflation uncertainty actually is the biggest hurdle to economic growth. It has a very significant impact on economic growth. So what we are asking is that when it is the low and stable inflation, it reduces, it minimizes the uncertainty actually, and it actually increases the purchasing power of the people. It is not necessarily by saying that it is the promoting consumption. It is creating your aggregate demand. So there are two components of aggregate demand. One is the investment that you said the consumption. A low and stable inflation promotes these both. Inflation uncertainty goes, stable inflation, stable prices, investors' decisions are predictable. The predictability is the major, and that is why the countries where there has been inflation targeting, even if you see the India, flexible inflation targeting, it is following that. I think State Bank of Pakistan is also going there. There have been a more share of investment compared to Pakistan. I mean, you have rightly said that Pakistan's share in consumption is around 90%. So that is only 70% in India. But a stable monetary policy, stable inflation has a very critical role because it reduces your inflation and macroeconomic uncertainty that we call. Similarly, Pakistan has also been a very sort of trade to exchange rate uncertainty itself. Because monetary policy does not have a very clear target that it has to make. It has been a very reactionary monetary policy that creates panic, uncertainty, and that actually reduces the investment opportunities, the incentive to invest. So this is exactly where inflation targeting will be very critical to promote investment in the country. I hope I was able to answer. No, please. Can I respond to questions and we can? Okay.
Sorry to like problem between. The problem is for the businessmen, inflation is a real return. You know, when the inflation increases, like say for example, when you compare investment in stocks and investment in the real goods, the inflation is the return that you get from the goods. And as an investor, I'm not proposing high inflation, but what I think like that produces the real return. Like say, for example, if you're comparing again the portfolio in which you are investing, like you get the stock and then the goods, your good inflation is that return. Like say, for example, the price of the commodity.
I got the point. Let me just quickly respond. You know, one of the biggest concerns of Pakistan businessmen is right now, you know what is that? It is the interest rate changes. And why is the state bank changing interest rate? Because inflation is volatile. So there is no trajectory of interest rate possible if you do not have a trajectory of inflation. And that is why, if you ask any businessman right now, the biggest concern is the rising inflation rate or the volatility in the inflation rate, the interest rate. And interest rate is following the inflation. When you don't have a set target and you have a reactionary monetary policy, so interest rate follows the inflation to control it. And this is where the biggest concern for businessman is, number one. Number two, businessman's concern is not inflation. It is the difference between inflation and interest rate, the real returns. So if you have a low inflation, you will definitely have a low interest rate, and that suits to the businessman. So it has come from three angles actually. It reduces minimizes uncertainty, it promotes investments. So this is how it goes. On the last question, monetary policy statement, really, I don't know that why State Bank did not change. Market was actually expecting some minor hike maybe, but maybe as the third question was that there are some discussion going that this is an episodic inflation and it may settle down gradually. So maybe State Bank of Pakistan wanted to have a wait and see policy, but definitely there was a mismatch coming from the market. If you see the yield curve is a bit higher now. If you see the last 3 months T-bill auctions, it is higher than the interest rate that State Bank has set. So it means that there is some things going on. There was a mismatch slightly, but I think State Bank, as for experts, I mean, they believe that I've been talking to, that State Bank most probably thought to wait and see that maybe things can get settled down. And finally, quickly, current inflation has global trends, and it has 3 to 4 key indicators. The one is the global commodity prices. You have a V-shaped recovery immediately, and then there was a saving belt actually. There was a forced saving during the lockdown, particularly from the rich segments of the people. So now travel bans, tourism bans, so they couldn't spend. Now when it is opening, they are spending, and due to supply chain disruptions, this market is not responding in a way to absorb those saving belt and aggregate demand. So this is also pushing up, and oil prices are also a major element. But one factor that relates to our study is the credibility of any central bank to control that. India, Bangladesh are living in the similar conditions. They are having the similar import prices, similar oil prices, many other. Similarly, the Fed is there also. So there is evidence suggesting that the countries where the central bank is taken to be credible enough that people believe that our central bank will control the inflation, there this will be a short-term phenomenon. It will go gradually down because people believe in the capacity of the central bank to control that inflation. So they will go by whatever the announcement is. But in the countries where there is no credible monetary policy or there is a lesser credibility, this inflation can translate into longer-term structural issues. It cannot come down. So that was the quick response. I hope I was able to answer. So in today's, related to today's discussion, it is the credibility of any central bank that will define actually how longer this inflation episode will persist over time, or how stronger will be the impact. In Pakistan, we have 13% inflation, but in India, we have 4 to 6% around. Because there is a flexible inflation target, they have a clear target. There are some ups and downs there. But definitely, so this is where I think that SDPI's autonomy and moving towards inflation targeting regime will be a great help and moving forward.
We have time.
You can please.
My name is Vaqar from Panellists. Sir, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि जैसे कोविड की सिचुएशन आई थी तो हमारा एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर भी इस तरह मुतासर हो गया था। तो मतलब स्टेट का मतलब की रिकवरी के लिए अपनी की है। ये सब पूछना चाहती हूँ। और सर मैं कंप्लीशन भी करना चाहती हूँ कि जब ये कोविड की सिचुएशन आई थी और उससे पहले मतलब किस तरीके से कवर किए एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में मतलब किस तरीके से। Thank you so much.
Do we have any more questions from the back benches?
Very good.
Assalamualaikum sir, my name is Vaqar. Sir, मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि साउथ एशिया मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी अर्लियर से वो यूज करने आए हैं मतलब फिस्कल पॉलिसी यूज है लेकिन अब रिसेंट वो कर रहे हैं हमारे यहाँ अब बहुत डेवलप कंट्री हो गए हैं साउथ एशिया में साउथ कोरिया जो है वो साउथ एशिया बहुत डेवलपमेंट कंट्री है एज कम्पेयर टू अदर तो उसका ये एक वजह है कि हम मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी से इतना मोड़ नहीं है ये एक वजह हो सकती है क्योंकि अभी क्या हम मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी से इंप्लीमेंट इतना ज्यादा हमारा रुझान नहीं है यही वजह है कि साउथ कोरिया ज्यादा मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी को रुझान इसलिए डेवलप कर रहा है और हमारा काम है हम इसलिए थोड़ा सा डेवलपमेंट
Yeah, I cannot blame the backbencher, but myself has been always a backbencher. So I myself do to avoid asking questions. So please, if you can fill that gap, one question from back benches and then we. Abdullah, go to back benches if anybody can. Let's test. कोई एक सवाल भी बैक बेंच से आ जाए वो एंड पे चले जाए उन्होंने काम छोड़ दिया बिल्कुल एंड पे थैंक यू मैं खुद बैक बेंचर रहा हूँ सारी जिंदगी तो मैं समझता हूँ कि आप क्यों सवाल करते हैं
सर एक ऑब्जर्वेशन है और एक सवाल है सबसे पहले तो आपने बात की कि बैंक को नॉन टेक्निकल अपनी मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी तो पाकिस्तान के यूनियन लैंग्वेज या बाय लैंग्वेज को भी तो अगर स्टेट बैंक करेगा तो वो मैक्सिमम उर्दू में करेगा लेकिन मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी की जो डिफरेंशिएशन है वो डिफरेंट लैंग्वेजेस में होता है तो इसके लिए स्टेट बैंक आउटसाइड पार्टनर या एमओसी फाइंड के एसडीपीआई इस तरह के रिलेटेड इदारे और बैंक और इस तरह के मॉनेटरी रिलेटेड इदारे इनको कुछ समझ है वो मॉनेटरी स्टेटमेंट के अगले दिन लोकल लैंग्वेज लोकल अखबारों में मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी के इम्प्लीकेशन को काफी इस तरह से परसेप्शन मेंटेन होगी और जो स्पेकुलेशन है वो भी रिलेटेडली कम होगी क्योंकि परसेप्शन मैनेजमेंट में मेरे हिसाब से रूरल एरिया को हम फोकस नहीं कर सकते जब तक फूड इन्फ्लेशन प्राइसेस और डिमांड हाइक ये सारी रूरल एरिया से ही क्रिएट होगी और फिर इसका इम्पैक्ट पड़ता है आपकी अर्बन या अर्बन सोसाइटी लेकिन ये जनरेट रूरल एरिया से तो रूरल एरिया को हम निगलेक्ट कर देते हैं जब भी हम बात करते हैं मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी दूसरा अनसर्टेनिटी की एक्सपेक्टेशन की हमने बात की तो एक्सचेंज रेट अनसर्टेन रहा है पिछले 2019 के बाद से जब से करंट स्टेट बैंक रिजीम में आके इसको फ्री फ्लोटिंग एक्सचेंज रेट पे कन्वर्ट कर दिया अब जब फ्री फ्लोटिंग एक्सचेंज रेट पे कन्वर्ट कर दिया और स्टेट बैंक ने हमें ये नहीं बताया कि व्हाट स्टेट बैंक अंडरस्टैंड कि व्हाट इज द एक्चुअल मार्केट वैल्यू फॉर पाकिस्तानी तो अगर स्टेट बैंक हमें 1-2% रेंज के साथ मार्केट वैल्यू भी बता दे तो हमें शायद अंदाजा हो कि स्टेट बैंक समझता है कि पाकिस्तान के डॉलर 179-176 के अराउंड बॉक्स करेगा तो फिर बिजनेसमैन को भी सर्टेनिटी होगी कि इससे ऊपर स्टेट बैंक नहीं जाने दे लेकिन जब स्टेट बैंक इसको फ्री फॉल पे छोड़ देता है तो आपने देखा होगा 6 महीने पहले एक वाइल्ड पुट आया 151 पे चला गया फिर वापस आ गया तो बीइंग अ बिजनेसमैन ये वाइल्ड पुट उसको 3-4-5 साल आगे की लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट से रोक देता तो ये दोनों चीजें परसेप्शन रिलेटेड है अगर आप इसका जवाब दे बैक वेंचर जैसे ही सवाल होगा लेकिन आई होप
थैंक यू सो मच शाम के आपकी तरह के बैक बेंचर होते से अपने दौर में हम तो बड़े लाइक बैक बेंचर नहीं है आपकी तरह नहीं है बट दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन खासकर जो आपकी प्रपोजल आई है लेट मी बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट विद यू कि हमने इस एंगल से नहीं सोचा था कि स्टेट बैंक जो है वो थिंक टैंक्स के साथ यूनिवर्सिटीज के साथ रीजनल है उनके साथ कुछ तरह के अरेंजमेंट्स करे ताकि उनका वहीं पे लोकल लैंग्वेज में तर्जुमा हो सके दैट इज वेरी एक्सीलेंट प्रपोजल हमारे जहन में इतनी क्लैरिटी के साथ नहीं थी so I really value your contribution we will definitely expand on this one thank you so much exchange rate I think हमने शायद I'm being very honest with you again कि हमने स्टेट बैंक को उसकी फुल पोटेंशियल और कैपेसिटी के साथ काम नहीं करने दिया हमारे यहाँ इससे पहले सवाल आया था कि फिस्कल डोमिनेंस इतनी रही है कि बहुत सारी चीजें जो स्टेट बैंक करना चाह रहा था वो नहीं कर पा रहा था वो आप भी शायद समझते हैं चीजें हम भी समझते हैं तो मुझे लगता है कि हम किसी की असेसमेंट तब कर सकते हैं जब हमने उसको एक फुली फ्रीडम दी हो अपने टारगेट्स को डिलीवर करने की एंड दिस इज आई थिंक कि जो एसडीपीआई अमेंडमेंट एक्ट 2021 है ये ना सिर्फ स्टेट बैंक की परफॉर्मेंस को इंप्रूव करेगा ये उसकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी को भी स्ट्रेंथन करेगा हम फिर पूछ सकते हैं कि जब आपको हमने फंक्शनल ऑपरेशनल हर तरह की फाइनेंशियल अकाउंटिंग दी है तो फिर ये क्यों आ रहा लास्टली ऑन एक्सचेंज रेट मुझे लगता है कि जो करंट एक्सचेंज रेट फ्लक्चुएशन है जो मैंने देखा भी है हम जब इसको कंपेयर करते हैं कि बांग्लादेश का रुपया स्टेबल रहा है या कम गिरा है तो हम शायद एक चीज भूल रहे होते हैं जब इंडिया और बांग्लादेश अपनी करेंसी को एडजस्ट होने दे रहे थे हमारे यहाँ फिस्कल पॉलिसी रुपये को आर्टिफिशियली मजबूत रखने पर जोर दे रही थी तो हमारे यहाँ जो वॉलेटिलिटी पिछले 4-5 महीने में या 2 साल में आई है वो अपनी 10 साल की एक्यूमुलेटेड वॉलेटिलिटी है ये जब भी होता है कि जब आप डेप्रिसिएशन को आर्टिफिशियली एक्यूमुलेट करते हैं तो वो यकदम जब गिरती है तो पैनिक क्रिएट होता है मार्केट में अनसर्टेनिटी क्रिएट होती है नंबर 2 नंबर 3 ये है कि जो एक्सचेंज रेट आपकी वैल्यू है वो डिफाइन होती है आपके इकोनॉमिक फंडामेंटल्स की चेंजेस के साथ। बड़ा मुश्किल होता है एक सर्टन वैल्यू देना कि इसके गिर्द रहेगा, लेकिन अगर ये स्टैब्लिश हो जाए, ये क्रेडिबिलिटी हो जाए कि आपका जो रुपया है वो मूव करेगा इकोनॉमिक चेंजेस के साथ, तो रुपया खुद ग्रेजुअली स्टेबल होता जाता है। और रुपये का गिरना बुरी बात नहीं है। लेट मी बी वेरी क्लियर, हमारे यहाँ स्ट्रॉन्ग रुपी मीन स्ट्रॉन्ग इकोनॉमी समझा जाता है। अगर ये रूल रखेंगे तो साउथ कोरिया हमसे तो 1100 गुना कमजोर मुल्क है, क्योंकि साउथ कोरिया के उसमें, हाँ ये सवाल फिर आता है कि वो तो एक्सपोर्टिंग कंट्री है, हम तो नहीं है। लेकिन अगला सवाल ये था कि ऐसा हुआ है क्योंकि हमने वैल्यूएशन के जरिए एक्सपोर्टर्स को हमेशा टैक्स रखा, उनको टैक्स किया, पेनलाइज किया और इंपोर्टर्स को प्रमोट करते रहे, जिसकी वजह से हमको डाइवर्सिफिकेशन वगैरह नहीं ला सके। बट आई एग्री कि जो एक्सचेंज रेट का एरिया है ये बड़ा क्रिटिकल होगा स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान के लिए भी मूविंग फॉरवर्ड। बट राइट नाउ इट इज इन द राइट डायरेक्शन कि जहाँ पे वो, अगर आप इस पॉलिटिकल अनसर्टेनिटी और इस एपिसोड को निकाल लें और अगर पिछले 5-10 साल में जो एक्यूमुलेशन हुई थी उसको निकाल लें, तो आई थिंक एक अच्छा डिसीजन है कि जो रुपया है वो ग्रेजुअली अपनी पोजीशन के साथ मूव अप डाउन कर रहा है। और आपने देखा है कि रुपया 160 पे गए के दोबारा वापस 151 पे भी आया है। तो इट मीन कि जो स्टेट बैंक है इट इज अलाउइंग in a certain range to get rupee adjust to the economic fundamentals। और आई strongly recommend कि स्टेट बैंक को इसको रोकना नहीं चाहिए, क्योंकि आप दोबारा वही काम करेंगे जो 2016-17-18 में हुआ है। आप अभी रोक लेंगे, बाद में ये फिर गिर जाएगा, क्योंकि आप किसी भी प्राइस को जब डिस्टॉर्ट करते हैं तो उसका नेगेटिव इफेक्ट आता है। और एक्सचेंज रेट इज प्राइस ऑफ रुपी डिटरमाइंड बाय द फंडामेंटल्स। कोविड-19 में आई थिंक वन ऑफ द ब्रिलियंट रिस्पांस इसको बहुत अप्रिशिएट किया गया है वो स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान का था। दो बड़े क्रिटिकल उसमें थे, एक तो इमीडिएटली कटिंग इंटरेस्ट रेट था और वो सबको फायदा हुआ। जो एग्रीकल्चर में एसएमईज थी, जो बहुत सारी चीजों पे थी, उनको इंश्योर किया गया, उनको कर्जे दिए गए, उनके कर्जों को डिले किया गया, जो उनको वापस करना था उनको कहा गया कि आप हमें वापस ना करें, आप अपनी जो कास्ट ऑफ बॉर्न का उसको मजीद कम रखा गया। अभी तक जो टॉप की स्कीम है वो चल रही है। तो उसमें हाँ एक जो कंसर्न है जाहिर वो शायद स्टेट बैंक के डायरेक्ट कंट्रोल में नहीं है, वो हमारी इकोनॉमी के ऊपर है कि who was actually able to access those finances or credits। तो जनरली ये है कि जो SMEs हैं वो नहीं कर पाएंगे उस तरह से एक्सेस उसको, जो बड़े लार्जर फर्म्स थी, चाहे वो एग्रीकल्चर में थी, वो चाहे कहीं भी थी। बट ये बड़ा अहम था क्योंकि हमारी जो स्टडी हमने स्टेट बैंक में की है उसके अकॉर्डिंगली अगर इंटरेस्ट रेट कट ना होता तो आपका जितना गवर्नमेंट का रिलीफ आएगा, फिस्कल पैकेज आएगा, उसका इम्पैक्ट बहुत कम होता। हमारी स्टडी ये बता रही थी कि बाय इंक्रीजिंग 1 percentage point interest rate, it takes away significant benefits from the fiscal package। तो वो जो गेन्स फिस्कल पैकेज से आए वो बड़ी हद तक डिपेंडेंट थे कि स्टेट बैंक ने बड़ा टाइमली उसको, या बट डेफिनेटली गोइंग फॉरवर्ड ये हो सकता है कि टारगेटेड स्कीम्स फर्दर हो जैसे अभी हो रही हैं, कुछ एग्रीकल्चर के लिए भी हो, स्मॉल फार्मर्स के लिए हो, जैसे हाउसिंग के लिए हो रही है। बट आई थिंक आई जस्ट सी जो मेन क्राइटेरिया होना चाहिए सेंट्रल बैंक को असेस करने का, दैट इज द मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी। क्योंकि बाकी रेजिडुअल पॉलिसीज हैं वो अपनी जगह अहम है, बट जो मेन क्राइटेरिया रहेगा वो ये है कि हाउ स्टेट बैंक ऑफ पाकिस्तान परफॉर्म्स ऑन डिलीवरिंग लो एंड स्टेबल इन्फ्लेशन आफ्टर एसडीपी अमेंडमेंट। And I hope I covered your answer in this one as well, fiscal governance for fiscal. Thank you. I think we don't have more questions, so let me move to for final comments from Dr. Safia. Safia, over to you, please.
मैं पहले आपसे चाहूंगी कि आपको थोड़ा सा सवाल करने कोई परेशानी की बात नहीं, छोटे छोटे सवाल आपके आ रहे तो करेंगे, बिल्कुल बैक कैप्चर देंगे, थोड़ा सा बकअप करना पड़ता है।
नो
उनको माइक दे, बिल्कुल पीछे।
सर आपके लिए आए हैं जिससे हम बात चलते हैं, अदरवाइज एक्सपर्ट सब वहां पे चल जाते हैं। हम सिर्फ आपके लिए यू आर द चीफ गेस्ट। और अदनान इन द मीनटाइम कैन यू आस्क आवर फ्रेंड्स ऑन द ऑनलाइन पे किसी का कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो चैट बॉक्स में दे कैन प्लीज डू, अदरवाइज स्टेट बैंक से मुलाकात करेंगे।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम, माय नेम इज Fatima, आई एम एन इकोनॉमिक्स स्टूडेंट। मेरा क्वेश्चन वैसे तो थोड़ा सा इररिलेवेंट है, लेकिन मैं यहाँ पर आपकी राय लेना चाहूँगी। मेरा सवाल ये है कि इतने सारे दुनिया में इस्लामिक कंट्रीज हैं, 57 इस्लामिक, तो हमें जब कर्जा चाहिए होता है तो हमें आईएमएफ के पास जाना पड़ता है। इस्लामिक कंट्रीज मिलकर अपनी करेंसी नहीं बना रहे जिसके अंदर सब आपस में ट्रेडिंग करें जिसकी वजह से इनकी करेंसी स्ट्रॉन्ग हो और फिर और इनको जो भी लोन वगैरह चाहिए वो आपस में ही अपने ही कंट्री से उनको वो लोन मिले इनकी कंडीशन भी बाद में वो खुलकर आराम से कर सकते।
अच्छा क्वेश्चन Any other questions? Okay, let me respond to this question. This is a very important question. और बहुत दफा पहले भी ये क्वेश्चन रेज होता है. Let me give you some statistics कि ये क्यों पॉसिबल नहीं होगा at current time. लेकिन जब आप ब्लॉक बनाते हैं इंटर उसका जिसको हम आजकल करेंसी स्वैप्स कह रहे हैं एक दूसरे के साथ आप अपनी करेंसी में ट्रेड करेंगे जहाँ पे कॉमन करेंसी हो. इसमें हम यूरोप की एग्जांपल देते हैं. इसका यूरो है अपना वो बड़ी स्ट्रॉन्ग करेंसी. और ये याद रखिए कि जो इंटर यूरोप जो ट्रेड है उनका आपस में वो उनकी 86% जरूरियात को पूरा करता है. उनकी जो 86% जरूरियात हैं वो एक दूसरे के मुल्कों से जो ब्लॉक के अंदर है उनसे पूरी हो जाती है. इस्लामिक वर्ल्ड में सिर्फ 14% हो. अगर इस्लामिक ब्लॉक बनाता है उस करेंसी को वो सिर्फ 14% ट्रेड के लिए इस्तेमाल हो सकेगी जो इंटर इस्लामिक कंट्रीज में होती है. आपको जब भी टेक्नोलॉजी इंपोर्ट करनी है मशीनरी इंपोर्ट करनी है कोई भी चीजें इंपोर्ट करनी है तो यू हैव टू गो टू द यूरोप ऑफ द वेस्ट. तो उसकी वजह से शायद ये बहुत ज्यादा इफेक्टिव एट दिस स्टेज नहीं है. बट डेफिनेटली देयर इज अ थिंकिंग डिस्कशन हो रही है. बहुत सारी चीजें खास करके जो ऑयल क्राइसिस आया है इसके बाद जो बहुत सारे ब्लॉक्स जो हैं चाइना रशिया ये भी सोच रहे हैं कि जो करेंसी स्वैप से हमको ज्यादा रूटीन में किया जाए. और मुझे लगता है जैसा हमने शुरू में कहा था कि तीसरे महंगी थीसिस देयर इज ऑलवेज इवॉल्विंग इन द थिंकिंग. तो ये ग्रेजुअली हो रहा है. बट लेट्स बिलीव एंड सॉर्ट ऑफ ये जो अगले काफी सालों तक जो डॉलर है दैट विल रिमेन द मेजर करेंसी. नंबर 2 ऑन द IMF. IMF का जो पॉइंट है दैट इज नॉट अबाउट जस्ट गेटिंग $6 billion. I think $6 billion is not a big amount. Pakistan's gross financing needs by 2023 are around $30 billion, more than $30 billion. So $6 billion is not a big amount. But IMF is a kind of a credit certificate which enables you to go to the international market. And unfortunately, as this was pointed from here, that we have very consumption-led growth. I have a complete paper on it and a presentation on that why Pakistan has a frequent macroeconomic crisis. And that goes to the structure of economic growth. Consumption-led, import-based, where the agriculture sector will pass directly to services sector without consolidating manufacturing sector. So this makes our growth fundamentally unsustainable. In an interview, I was asked that what is the biggest risk to Pakistan's economy? I said the higher economic growth. Because whenever you have a higher growth, above 5%, you have a balance of payment crisis. The more the higher will be. So this means to stop seeing money.
Ahmed, there is one more question.
Yes, we can take
We
that.
yeah, there is one more question at the back. Please. Just quick 2 questions.
Yes,
Another one is from there. Any quick questions? You have one? Okay. कोई बात नहीं.
सर मेरा नाम फवाद है और मैं एमपी का स्टूडेंट हूँ. मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि हम लोग करेंसी की बहुत ज्यादा बात कर रहे हैं और फ्यूचर में करेंसी है वो बिटकॉइन की तरफ जा रहा है. हम लोग इलेक्ट्रॉनिक करेंसी को ट्रेडिंग ऐसा हो गया. लेकिन तो पाकिस्तान में इस वक्त तो बैन की है बिटकॉइन. लेकिन रशिया ने भी करंट सैंक्शन का असर खत्म करने के लिए इकोनॉमी से बिटकॉइन में ट्रेड शुरू कर दिया. जिसमें लोग सैंक्शन कराई हैं अमेरिका में तो दे आर ट्रेडिंग इन बिटकॉइन राइट नाउ. वो अपना ऑयल और दूसरी चीजें बिटकॉइन को हम ये समझते हैं कि फ्यूचर में करेंसी का इफेक्ट जो है खत्म हो जाएगा और सेंट्रल बैंक्स जो है जो कि जहाँ पे एनर्जी फंड रेगुलेट है वो लोग उसको जो है बाईपास कर देंगे.
Another question at the back.
Well, with the mic.
पोहे पीछे होते हैं बोली के
Last question.
The main part is that we always talk about interest rate. अगर फिक्स बात करूं तो इंटरेस्ट रेट का सिस्टम मुझे कुछ उस मालदार हिंदुस्तान के सिस्टम लगता है जो कि गरीबों की जमीन है ना मुझे बोलता है कि मैं इसमें खेती करता हूँ तो आप वन बैलेंस में आपको जहाँ तक इनकम दे दूंगा इंटरेस्ट रेट का सिस्टम मुझे बिल्कुल ऐसा होता है तो ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा कि हमको ऐसी सुविधा देते हैं सारे सुविधा देंगे तो डेवलप कंट्रीज के लोगों ने जब डेवलप कंट्रीज की प्रॉब्लम आए तो उनके लिए बनाएंगे हम उनको यूज करते हैं ऐसी कोई रिसर्च हमारी नहीं है कि हम इंटरेस्ट को सब्सिट्यूट मिले जिसको हम इंटरेस्ट शो करें और फिर उससे जो है ना हम डेवलप कंट्री डेवलप कंट्री में पढ़े क्योंकि ये सिस्टम जो है मुझे नहीं लगता कि इसको कोई राह है हमारे लिए
एक ही और लेंगी
आपने कर लिया होगा आपने डिस्कस किया तो ग्रुप ने पूछ लिया है अगर कोई एक क्वेश्चन और है जो पहले नहीं पूछा आई कैन कोलैबोरेट टुगेदर
ये है ये एक ही है इधर करीब आते हैं आप
बहुत ज्यादा फालतू की रकम इंक्रीज हुई है लेकिन उसके बावजूद जो हमारे एक्सचेंज रेट में चालू स्टेबल नहीं हुआ क्योंकि माइक्रो लेवल पे हमने ये पढ़ा है कि हमारे प्राइवेट इंक्रीज होती है तो कंट्री में एक्सचेंज रेट होती है स्टेबल होता है तो मेरे को लगता है कि मतलब कितने टाइम हो गया हमारा एक्सचेंज रेट स्टेबल नहीं होगा
Thank you. I hope my colleagues from Statement also listening these comments. और जब हम बैठे होंगे तो हम ये डिस्कस कर रहे होंगे लेकिन वो इन द रिवर्स ऑर्डर जो रिमिटेंसेस वाला देखिए हम जब रिमिटेंसेस को सेपरेट नहीं देखते हमारे ऊपर अपने करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट क्या है ये देखना पड़ेगा क्योंकि आपका जो रिमिटेंसेस है वो एक कंपोनेंट है आपके करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट का तो एक्सचेंज रेट एक बड़ी हद तक डिफाइन होता है मल्टीपल फैक्टर्स हैं जिसमें पॉलिटिकल इंस्टेबिलिटी और बहुत सारी बट अगर हम इकोनॉमिक फंडामेंटल्स की बात करें तो जो आपका करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट होता है वो सारी चीजों को कंबाइन करके Pakistan is having history highest current account deficit. So that is putting the pressure on rupiah. So this is how it could not be stable despite the remittances बढ़ी. Number one. Number two, I think remittances को बहुत ज़्यादा भी नहीं बढ़ी. वो एक टेम्परेरी था, एपिसोडिक था. हम बार-बार ये कह रहे हैं कि वो ग्रेजुअली कम हो गए और आप 4-5 मास उसको देखते हैं डेटा को तो वो ग्रेजुअली स्लो हो गई. 2.6 बिलियन पर मंथ से अब वो वैल्यू 2.02 बिलियन के करीब में जो हमारी हिस्टोरिकल एवरेज वो तो बड़ी थी वो सिर्फ इसलिए बड़ी थी कि जहाज आना बंद हो गए थे ट्रैवल बंद हो गया था तो वो पैसे जो मैं दोस्तों के हाथों देखता था वो पॉसिबल नहीं था आना होने के लिए हमारे के लिए तो वो थोड़ा सा चैनलाइज हुआ वो एपिसोडिक था वो किसी दुनिया में होता था लेकिन हमारी जो इम्पोर्ट्स ग्रोथ है वो बहुत ज्यादा एक्सपोनेंशियली हुई तो इस साल ये प्रेडिक्ट किया जा रहा है कि यही ट्रेंड्स रहे कमोडिटी प्राइसेस के और बाकी चीजों के तो हम हिस्ट्री हाईएस्ट करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट की वजह दैट इज पुटिंग प्रेशर ऑन तो जो पे की वैल्यू होती है वो बहुत सारी चीजों को मिल के पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी कॉन्टेक्स्ट और सारी चीजों में चल रही होती है तो दैट इज व्हाई इट इज नॉट आपको लगता है कि रिमिटेंसेस के साथ मूव नहीं कर रहा तो बड़ा माइनर इंपैक्ट उसके ऊपर आएगा इंटरेस्टिंग बहुत बड़ा अहम क्वेश्चन है बट ऑनेस्टली आई डोंट हैव अ वेरी क्लियर आंसर इस पर हां ये जरूर है कि इस पे रिसर्च तो हो रही है जो आपका इस्लामिक इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम है उसमें माय पीएचडी फ्रॉम इस्लामिक यूनिवर्सिटी सो लेकिन अभी शायद हम उस तरह का कोई प्रपोजल दे नहीं पाए जो इस पूरे सिस्टम को रिप्लेस कर सके बट देयर इज अ सीरियस रिसर्च गोइंग ऑन कैसे इसको बेहतर किया जा सकता है आई एम श्योर कि जो स्टेट बैंक है वो भी इन चीजों पे उनके यहाँ रिसर्च हो रही होती है हमारे यहाँ एक शरिया काउंसिल भी है इस तरह बहुत सारी चीजों में रिसर्च तो चल रही है बट शायद अभी कोई इफेक्टिव मॉडल हमारे पास नहीं आया लाइक यू आई विश कि हमारे पास इसका मुतबादल हो सके और बेहतर हो सके बट जब तक नहीं होगा हमें इसी सिस्टम के साथ गुजारा करना होगा क्योंकि हम पूरी दुनिया के साथ डिस्कनेक्टेड नहीं हो सकते तब तक हमारे पास कोई अल्टरनेटिव सिस्टम जो हो नहीं आता. बट आई शेयर योर कंसर्न्स एंड क्वेश्चंस. रेड पॉइंट्स में आई एग्री के जो टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस आ रहे हैं, बहुत सारी चीजें हैं, वो टेक्नोलॉजी जो पेनिट्रेशन है वो जिस तरह से बढ़ रही है डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज में, तो ग्रेजुअली वहाँ पर डिस्कशन है कि जो डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन ऑफ करेंसी है वो होगी ग्रेजुअली. बट मुझे लगता है कि पाकिस्तान जैसे मुल्कों में शायद थोड़ा सा बहुत टाइम लगेगा. नंबर एक तो हमारे यहाँ जो टेक्नोलॉजिकल पेनिट्रेशन है वो बड़ी लो है. बहुत सारा इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर है जहाँ पे शायद इवन फाइनेंशियल लिटरेसी बड़ी लो है, तो आप रिक्वायरमेंट्स को तो छोड़ दें. तो मुझे लगता है कि स्टेट बैंक हैज इट्स ओन sort of understanding and very well based analysis जिसकी बेस पर मैंने रोका हुआ होगा. And I do believe कि दोनों वो हालात होंगे जहाँ पे स्टेट बैंक को लगेगा कि we start opening gradually. They are on it, they will be thinking of it, and they will be gradually opening. But myself I think कि अभी शायद जो रीजन है वो यही लगती है कि हमारे यहाँ वो जो अगर आप नेटवर्क हमारे यहाँ तो जो ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन थी वो हम नहीं दे पाए, जो रिमोट एरियाज में हमारे पास इंटरनेट ही नहीं है. यहाँ पे कराची में बैठ के टाप यूनिवर्सिटी में बैठ के बात करना आपको आपने देखा वॉइस कनेक्ट होने के लिए हमें 15 मिनट वेट करना पड़ा. तो वो मुझे लगा जब तक आपकी जो ब्लॉकचेन की सारी वो जो टेक्नोलॉजी है वो पेनिट्रेट नहीं कर जाती एक लार्ज स्केल पे, तो शायद स्टेट बैंक के जेब में हो और भी अवामल होंगे. बट आई डू बिलीव दैट आई एग्री gradually the world will be moving towards a decentralized currency. Thank you. But just 1 minute I summarize. Number one, monetary policy has a very strong social impact. It affects the public man day-to-day life. So the decisions should be considered. Those impacts, number one. We are not asking state bank to directly or any central bank to directly focus on inequality. So IMF is now asking, research is suggesting that these are the words of IMF, that inequality should be an explicit target of monetary policy. But we understand all these, so they should start thinking like this. And we are asking only that deliver a low and stable inflation. That state bank is also willing to do it. And this is why it's engaging with all of you. We have colleagues joined us from State Bank of Pakistan. And this exactly shows their commitment to hear us, to listen us, and to sort of modify their thinking and the policies accordingly. So we really appreciate all those who have joined us from State Bank of Pakistan. And finally, the SDPI Amendment Act is a step in the right direction. It should have happened very early, 10-20 years back, and this is the right step. And this is critical. So any government, we have whatever happens on 29th, 30th, whatever the March, no confidence. The government should stick to the bill. But yes, there are margin of improvements that we are highlighting, and that we have been in discussion also. The state bank is also willing to modify it wherever it is possible. Because this is the first time things improve gradually. So government should engage with State Bank of Pakistan to modify that wherever it is possible. But we should not think even to reverse this. Because this is actually an injustice to the people of Pakistan, public at large, if we do not let State Bank of Pakistan freely act to deliver low and stable inflation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Javed Amin, and SDPI, members of SDPI, and I especially thank to Dr. Niels from Frederick Abbott Foundation. We are really thankful to all of you and for your support or for listening to this. This is really, and also I would like to thank Dr. Vaqar and especially my mentor, Professor Sajid Sahab. This is your teachers. He is your teacher's teacher, our mentor and your teacher's teacher. It's very blessing he is here. Professor Dr. Nooreen Mujahid, the chairperson, Department of Economics. Dr. Javed, that really is very important and useful research. Basically, monetary policy or any regulatory authority cannot work in isolation. There is a need at this time, there is a need, the State Bank of Pakistan should collaborate with academia, like different industries, different university, public sector, as well as private sectors, and to engage their students and their teachers how to improve quality of research, which is public-oriented research, right? So these policies should be public-oriented. So that's why we can find the footprints of social impact. Otherwise, it's not possible. If each and everyone are working in isolation, it's very difficult to create a positive and clear picture of the development of the society, right? Number second, I also focus to my students to please think about your basic questions, basic problem of the society. Don't rely only on social media as well as the print media. What are the basic problems do you face? Not directed by the media. And what are the basic problems? Then we can understand how you live yourself with the monetary policy as well as because they are the major goals. How the major macroeconomic goals are basically achieved by the monetary policy and the fiscal policy. So here monetary policy is impact. Why monetary policy should become a public friendly, and public friendly. When how it becomes a public friendly, when we think about it, we listen to them, and we read the policy statements. Again, then, and for this, I request the State Bank of Pakistan to please try to consult with our academia, from the academia, and especially the program to maintain a public consultation meetings, which may improve its policy research. Thank you, all of you, and don't have enough time to talk with you. Thank you so much, especially SDPI and Dr. Javed and panelists.
Okay, thank you. So let me take the position of thanking you. Finally, I'll start thanking my colleagues here sitting around me, Dr. Moderator, Dr. Niels, Dr. Vaqar, who joined us online, Safia, Minhaj, so please big hands for these panelists. Just hands for you people. Very interesting discussion. Please, whenever you can emails, we can share with you our email detail also. And just think, monetary policy is a very integral part of development agenda of the country, and this should actively. Thank you so very much. I once again thank you all of you. We have paper if you want, if you are interested in hard copies, please. We will also share the link with Dr. Safia and Ahmed of the study of the soft copies. Thank you so very much once again. I'm really honored.